In those moments where my darling angels just send me to the goddamn moon on the fastest rocket possible,
Yeah.
I have to use my skills I learned in therapy to breathe and settle down because pouring gasoline on a fire is not going to work.
Yeah.
If I need to give them space, I give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And we have things in place, like their own little safe, little cozy corner. I come in and out. I check on them. I help them self-regulate, hugs, some sensory input, whatnot. But if it gets heated, I apologize. And I'm like, guys, this was my responsibility in this. And our parents didn't do that. And again, I'm not blaming the older generations. It just wasn't part of the parenting picture.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the part of like where it's the gentle parenting piece, where it's like everything hardcore gentle parenting, where sometimes I think there's a little bit too many rainbows and butterflies, and no disrespect to that. But there has to be a middle ground of, here are what consequences look like. But if I took it too far, I'm going to be accountable for that and apologize and repair, and yet not burden the children. I don't need to tell you why. I don't need to tell you about all the deep, dark things that maybe had me coming home at a level 10.
Right.
That's not it is my job as a parent to keep them as kids, to not, parentify, to not make it their problem. I tell my older one especially, you are the child, I am the adult. It is not your place to take care of me. Like, we are a team and we work together, but little ones, stay in your lane. Like I said in the last podcast, you got to stay in your lane. You are a 9-year-old. You are not a 42-year-old adult.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of that. I can say, you know what? Mommy had a busy day. Like, I'm stressed. Mommy didn't eat.
Yeah.
Like, mommy didn't drink enough water today. Mommy's had a lot of stuff going on. Or like, guys, I'm just having a day.
Yeah.
And I can cry too. And I can.
Yeah. And that's modeling transparency. That's modeling that adults don't have it all together. That's modeling that, like, I didn't eat, A plus B equals C. Like, I didn't eat, I didn't drink. So that
consequences
resulted.
It's what happens.
Exactly. But I love the part that you said, it's not their job to take care of you. And I think that's a big shift culturally in our parenting model, where when we were kids, that wasn't necessarily the thought process. Kids were more seen to serve their parents. And so what are some ways that parents listening who are like, whoa, wait a second. What are some ways that they can make sure that they are not kind of burdening their kids with the responsibility to take care of them?
It's a good question. I think a couple of things. Number one, it comes back to like your framework of parenting. Like, when you have a framework and an idea of how you want this thing called parenting to go and what you think are reasonable expectations and developmentally appropriate expectations. So yes, I don't need my children taking care of me, and I don't need my older one functioning as a second adult.
Yeah.
But it is developmentally appropriate for a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old to do certain things. So I think that's where I make it a point to, even I tell parents, go work with a child psychologist, talk to your pediatrician about like, what is developmentally appropriate for kids to do? When you can reference the research, and again, I think the internet can be a great place for that. Sometimes it gets a little murky, but like, call a pediatrician, touch base, do 1 or 2 sessions with a psychologist to get an understanding of what is developmentally appropriate. I think that framework can then dictate what is reasonable to expect from a child, both in terms of like tasks they might do and also emotion regulation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, a 3 and 4-year-old and even maybe a 5-year-old still might have more explosive outbursts and temper tantrums than a 7, 8, 9-year-old.
Yeah.
And that's normal. Again, it's all a range. It's normal. I also, as a way to I try to get ahead of problems before they come up. So I talk to my kids. Like, I do a check-in when I pick them up. What was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day? Do you need anything from me? Not that I don't care what they did, but like, they don't remember what they did. Like, how was your day at school? Like, if there's a problem, I'm going to find out about it. Exactly. But not by asking that. I make it a point to talk to them right at bedtime. That's when they're tired and like a little bit more vulnerable and willing to share. And that's also where sometimes repair work can happen. And I'm also okay with like everyone taking a timeout, not like a punishment timeout, but like you know what, guys, we all need some space. And I'm willing to be flexible. So sometimes I don't get home from work until like 6 o'clock. Yeah. Even if the snacks at aftercare, like, my kids are hungry. Yeah. Sometimes I'm on top of planning dinner. Most of the time I'm not, but I like, this week I'm on point. Like, we're eating well this week.
Nice.
Excellent. But if they're about to break down or they're having a hard time finishing something because they're fucking hungry,
grab a snack, dude.
Go grab a snack.
Yep.
Go grab a snack.
Same.
So like that's emotion regulation right there. And it's
Yes.
my job as a parent to be flexible. Like you're going to spoil your dinner. Okay, you know what? Like they're not allowed to have cookies when they get home as a snack. Have fruit, have
Right.
yogurt, have something that, you know what? Guess what? That counts as dinner now. That's wonderful.
So
I have
true.
to be flexible as a parent from an emotion regulation standpoint and let go of how it was done for me and how I thought and what society may think about me as, am I a good parent? Am I a bad parent? And I hear that a lot in my head, like, oh, she's by herself. Like these kids are like doing this or doing that. Like, yes, I'm by myself. And my kids are on point and they're awesome. And I get great feedback. So letting go of what people say or what you think they're saying can also help a lot with the emotion regulation piece. And when you can have a framework of, I just want my kids to be healthy. They're not going to be happy all the time, but like have contentment and not be assholes. Those are my parenting outcomes. And to be independent. I'll add a fourth to that. I want them to be able to launch successfully. It says nothing about grades. It says nothing about like, I want them to be good, kind people, don't suck, and like be effective communicators and be able to launch. That's when I remind myself of that framework, and that's the mindfulness work, that's journaling, that's me pausing and being like, Jessica, what are you trying to accomplish right now? When I can start to do that, and that took me a really long time because the emotions get hot for me, then I'm able to parent more flexibly and effectively.
I'm so glad that you defined that framework because I was really curious. Like, I was thinking, well, I don't have a framework. I don't even know what a framework is. So for you to define it that way is so helpful.
So like that's the fun little trick when I talk about, and as a behavior therapist, you know, I take an acceptance and commitment-based approach, which is a third wave therapy. You can read about it, but it's, you know, accepting and not accepting what can and cannot change. It's just, it's the greater acceptance of, okay, this is my life. These are the things I want. Here are the values. And these are the things that how I want to show up and what I want to teach my kids and how I want them to show up in this fun thing called life, and committing to the process. And I always tell my parents and I tell my kids, it's consistency, not perfection. And even if you're a parent, you look at a kid's IEP, we're looking to do a skill or do a task 80% of the time. Or 3 out of 5. Like we're not looking for 100% unless it's a more, you know, advanced IEP and those other goals have been attained. But like perfection is not something that's a good goal in life. Neither is happiness either. So from an emotion regulation standpoint, I tell my kids, you're not happy, that's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And like
to be expected, actually.
And yes, but parents don't think, oh, if they're not happy, there's a problem. There's not this, there's a problem. So there's a lot of like, it's okay to not be okay. I know it's very cliche. And what's my framework? What am I actually trying to solve? What are my bigger picture things I want to accomplish? And when I can get clear on that, which again, the structure that scratches the itch in my ADHD brain and doesn't leave me like flailing, which then leads to the perfection and the paralysis. When I have my default framework, I can more effectively, more often than not, problem solve.
So good. I realized that I actually have used a framework. I mean, we all are operating out of a framework, I'm sure, right?
We don't know it.
Exactly. And so I do have a question that I ask myself a lot, which is, do I want control or do I want connection?
Ooh, I love that question.
Do I want control or do I want connection? And that has changed everything for me in my parenting and my relationship with my boys.
And I'm going to add to that, be flexible on that. Because sometimes as a parent, like we have to have control.
Totally.
Like,
if you're running
these
into
kids
the
are off
street.
cliff,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's for me, it is connection. And sometimes it's the emotional. Sometimes it's, can we just connect to this moment?
Yeah.
Like what is going on in the here and now?
Yeah.
Because if my daughter's upset about something, if I can get them to focus on the here and now and settle in and get the emotions to kind of, I don't want to say calm down, but just help them get a little bit more regulated, use strategies to connect to the moment and not be on a level 10 themselves, then I can have a more productive conversation.
Totally.
Because in my world and a lot of the work we do with parents and whatnot, it's not that one issue. Sometimes my kids are at a level 10, not because they're hungry or a problem that I can solve. Sometimes it's because there's some BS happening on the playground. Or in my world, you know, the kids going back and forth between two houses and some of the stresses that I actually do attempt to control. Some of the stresses that I can control and try to mediate. But as I tell my kids too, like, so your issue is that your parents are divorced. Okay. Someone else is going to have some other issue. Like, this might be aggressive, but like, I don't feel bad for you that that's your issue. 'Cause this is the deck that you were dealt.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say it could be worse, even though it is. I'm not going to say it could be better because it is. I'm not here to judge their experience. I am here to teach you the skill of here's the hand that was dealt to you that you might not have control over, but I can help you. Either sometimes I can pull the puppet strings as the parent, but how can I teach you to sit with the emotional issues that come up with that, whether it's school, home, whatever it is, and how can we not even problem solve, how can we just maybe be with that?
Yeah.
Sometimes these issues that kids are facing, especially in the preteen, teenage years, they are big, they are heavy, and I don't have the magic wand. If I had the magic wand, like I would be on a yacht in Turks and Caicos because I'd be able to solve everyone's problems. I don't, and to be a parent and to recognize that it's not my job to solve the problems, but I'm ride or die with you on it. Like, you're the captain of your life. I'm the first mate. I'm not going anywhere. I tell that to my kids, and I tell it to my patients too. Like, unless you get too far to those edges, I got to take over the ship. I'm right here with you. There's nothing we can't figure out together. Let's take a breath. I'm not going anywhere. My younger one especially, she gets a little spicy. She's like, get out of my room. I said, okay. I'm going to come back in about a minute because she actually doesn't want to be alone. But she had said to me once, she's like, it feels so big and heavy, Mom, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So we have a plan.
Yep.
And we execute on it. I say, I come back, and sometimes it's a little bit of back and forth, and she finally lets me give her a hug, and we can talk about it.
What are the qualities of a ride or die parent?
Oh,
I just love the way you use that term. And Tamara Rosier was here a little while ago, and she also talked about like she wished that she had ride or die parents. And I've been thinking about that since then. What do you think goes into, what does it take to be a ride or die parent? How can we be that for our kids?
the psychologist in me is going to first answer that there are also like cultural norms around that in terms of like how we are showing up for our kids, defined, to some extent defined by our culture, whether that's on a macro level or even on a micro level in my home. How I execute it, again, my framework for what defines ride or die is I can't help you if I don't know the problem. And I say that to my patients too. There's nothing that you can't tell me that's going to get me to the point where like, you're not my kid anymore. You're not this, you're not that. I am here.
Do we need to say that to our kids?
Yes. Okay. Because they need to believe it. Especially if you think your child might have an issue with emotion regulation, whether or not it's even clinically diagnosable. And even if they don't, like if my kid's at a party when they're older and there's drinking or drugs or some other shit that's getting funky, I want them to be able to text me without fear of consequences.
Yeah.
I am ride or die. I'm not going anywhere. Now, that doesn't mean that there might not be consequences, but I tell my kids the consequences are going to be far less if I'm in the loop.
Always.
If you're lying or keeping something from me, like then we have a problem. But even then, I'm not punishment focused. Like, doesn't mean I won't tear my kids a new one from time to time. I am interested in solving the problem.
Yep.
If I can solve the problem, then, or if I can understand the problem, again, the behaviorist to me, it decreases the likelihood of that problem occurring consistently in the future. I can't extinguish something in one fell swoop, but I can minimize the likelihood and decrease the likelihood of something happening again.
Yes. So it's expressing to our kids that we're here no matter what.